So Donald Trump signed an executive order. Some people have claimed that this executive order ends birthright citizenship. That is false. It does not end birthright citizenship. What it really does is it starts the process for trying to get a constitutional amendment to change back the birthright citizenship to what it was before and what every other country in the world does with birthright citizenship. So what did they ask you?
So yeah, yesterday with President Trump having his first full day in office, I got several questions from folks on LinkedIn asking me, really, what is the difference between, um, an executive order and
Mm-hmm.
something that's actually gone through Congress that has been, um, you know, uh, debated, brought to the floor for a vote, and I tried to answer questions from a non-lawyer's perspective about what is the legitimacy
Mm-hmm.
of an executive order. And as I said to folks, see, this is why I love having you, because you're the attorney. You can
Yeah.
you can opine on the legal stuff. Me, I have to say, hey, this is my non-legal explanation for it. But what I basically said is that this is an expedient way for a president to change the direction of the executive branch's operations and to influence domestic and foreign policy. It doesn't have the same permanence as a law, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, um, a law that's passed by Congress, which can only be overturned through a legislative action or judicial rulings. So, it's important. While some folks on the left are losing their absolute ever-loving minds about some of the executive orders that come out, these things are subject to legal challenges. They're subject to Congress taking them up
Yep.
and debating them and then crafting language and voting on it and passing laws. So the other thing that I try to explain is that with executive orders, they have the force of law within the executive branch. So one president has the ability to nullify or change the impact of a previous president's order with a new order, which is basically what happened with the United States exiting the World Health Organization, right? Because in 2017, then President Trump said, we're out. We're leaving the World Health Organization, just like he said we were leaving, NATO.
Mm-hmm.
And Biden came along in 2021, put us back into the World Health Organization. Trump has now written an executive order that it could take, over 11 months, over the next 11 months for us to exit the World Health Organization. So
Yeah.
I think it would be great for you as a lawyer to give some insight as to how does the executive orders process really work from a legal standpoint, and if there's any historical information that you can provide on Supreme Court rulings.
Yeah.
Anything comes
I
to
see
mind.
the Chat GPT answer floating around, and I think that's what we're having happen here. Is that people don't understand something, so they go to something like Chat GPT, they read off of it, and you miss the nuance, right? You miss what Cuba in Jerry Maguire calls the Quan.
The Quan.
You remember the Quan?
I remember the
Mario,
Quan.
clip of the Quan, please, for us,
Quan.
so that everybody can understand what the Quan is.
Quan. That's your word?
Hell yeah, that's my word. Some dudes might have the coin, but they'll never have the Quan.
What is...
It means love, respect, community, and the dollars too, the entire package, though. Quan. Great word.
It's the whole thing. It's the shoe deal, right? It's the everything. You need the Quan. And the Quan of a executive order is basically the president's power as the leader of the executive. He is the chief executive. He's the CEO of the country, right? He gets to set the internal policy for the entire country. That's all an executive order is. It's not a law.
Right.
So the reason why this is different, and I think executive orders they started to become overused, and presidents realized they had this power, and so there's this big to do about an executive order. But let me explain. I'll give you the Schoolhouse Rock version of this, and y'all should just watch Schoolhouse Rock really quick. Maybe
It's a
we can
great
get
movie.
it too. Yeah, I mean it's fantastic. That's how I learned all this stuff. I didn't go to law school. I just Schoolhouse Rock. The first thing that we do when we think about executive power or any power in general, and any good lawyer should do this, is we start with the Constitution. What does the Constitution say? I'm not going to go over the chapter and verse that gets into the ChatGPT answer, but the Constitution basically says that the president shall hold the executive office and be able to establish the policies inside of the executive office. So the Constitution grants Donald Trump power, granted Barack Obama power to rename Mount McKinley Denali, grants Trump the same power to name it back. What is Trump really? Let's use the McKinley example because I'm first Denali for life. I'm a Denali guy. I I don't want to call it McKinley. I will not call it McKinley, and the climbing people I know will not call it McKinley. But Donald Trump certainly has the power to name it Denali with his federal buddies, and they can walk around and or name it McKinley.
And I don't think people realize how much of a climber you actually are.
Well, it's something I enjoy doing in my free time. My legal job, and well, certainly not my podcast career, but my legal job funds my climbing habit. That's kind of how it is. So if
I was going to say, if your podcast career is funding anything, I need to know how you're doing that.
No, it's not. Not. We just do this because we like to hear ourselves talk, Sean. We don't think anybody actually listens. Come on. So we go to the source of power. It flows to the president. Then what is the president's power as the executive? Well, as the executive, he controls all of the executive functions. What's inside the executive? We've got the Department of Justice. I just finished an entire ebook, about 190 pages worth of this is what the Bondi Trump administration is going to do with the DOJ. I'll hopefully have a link by the time this show releases so that you all can get an understanding of what I expect to see out of this DOJ based on Pam Bondi's experience, Kash Patel's experience, as well as Todd Blanche. Do a complete deep dive on all of that, and it was a good time. But it's pretty robust and pretty thorough, and it'll give compliance professionals, I think, a hell of a heads up in terms of what we can expect to see from Bondi. Not to get too far off track, but we also saw Larry Ellison talk about EHRs yesterday. I want to talk about that later. So let's
Stargate, baby. Stargate.
Let's throw a bookmark in an EHR shout out. That's scary, but we'll see what happens with that. So the president controls the Department of Justice, the FBI, the DEA, Health and Human Services, all of those cabinet positions that he appoints. He is the boss of those people, and he gets to set the policy. But here's the caveat. Most policy for executive agencies is set by the executive agencies through a process called rulemaking, where they actually have to go through a formal legal process to create rules. So executive orders aren't like administrative rules that are properly created. Executive orders are just sort of edicts coming from the president. How do we challenge those if they don't have a formal process? Well, you go to court. So Donald Trump signed an executive order. Some people have claimed that this executive order ends birthright citizenship. That is false. It does not end birthright citizenship.
No.
What it really does is it starts the process for trying to get a constitutional amendment to change back the birthright citizenship to what it was before and what every other country in the world does with birthright citizenship.
Right.
I don't have to take a stance on that because we're not before a court right now. I would just say that it's a little crazy for people to think that the president with a stroke of a pen has just said a few million people are no longer citizens. That's not how the government works at all. These things can be challenged in court. So if you have beef with an executive order, you file a claim in a district court and you say this executive order is unconstitutional or it is an improper use of executive power. And likely you would say Congress never delegated the power to the president to engage in this act. Great example of this is the student loan debacle.
Right.
Biden wanted to do some funky business with student loans. What he should have done was go to Congress and say, hey, Congress, how should we do this? Instead, he decides to spend quite a few $1 billion in government funding without congressional approval. As a result, they went to court. He loses. He doesn't have the authority. He keeps doing it over again. He's like a repeat offender with this student loan thing. I know a lot of people are happy that they got their student loans wiped, but you probably shouldn't be happy that the president never had the power to do that in the first place and didn't do it the right way.
Well, let me ask you a question because I thought it was really interesting listening to Mike Johnson on an interview yesterday. I don't know if you heard it. He was talking about the first time he met with Joe Biden, and
Joe who?
Well, the decrepit individual who was the resident of the White House for
What now?
Yeah. Where am I? Can somebody get me ice cream?
I was just watching the ice cream truck thing, and I'm like, oh my, this is not real. This cannot.
It was real.
Please, ice cream truck, just hook it in there for us.
It was real.
And Secretary Cardona and Mayor Bowser and Chancellor Farabee, thank you for joining us as well. And for families across the country.
So Mike Johnson was talking about the fact that, during his first meeting when he became Speaker of the House with Joe Biden, he was questioning him about things that he had signed as an executive order. And it was just like the week before or a couple of days before.
I saw this. Yeah.
And Biden said, I didn't sign that.
Yeah.
And Johnson said, yes, Mr. President, you actually signed this.
Yeah.
No, I never signed that. So, this is, I think, where, when we're done talking about this, the intricacies and the process of, I want to talk about the whole thing with pardons because, I think this is critical because if Biden is signing things that he has no earthly idea what he's signing, how can these things remain in effect?
We got to show this Jon Stewart clip from his show where he jokes and he says, and Jon Stewart's coming a little bit further back now, and I appreciate it because I now find him funny again, and I appreciate him not being hyperbolic all the time. I like the new Jon Stewart. But he says, did Joe Biden auto schedule his pardons? Because it was actually signed when he was at the inauguration and there was no pen in Joe Biden's hand. He was staring at Jeff Bezos's chick the whole time and he didn't sign any pardons at all.
With just 20 minutes or so left in his presidency, we've just gotten word from President Biden that he is pardoning his brothers, their wives, his sister, other family members. He says that he is doing this because baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on the lives of individuals.
It's all just normal. First of all, Biden, you're at the inauguration. Did you auto-schedule your pardons?
This preemptive pardon thing as well. We've got to talk about it because we know that Trump looked at it and thought about it. I can't recall if he did. I was thinking the Kushner pardon was a preemptive pardon, but it may not have been because he was under federal investigation. So is it preemptive, not charged? He gets a pardon. I don't know. But let's just look at a little bit of hypocrisy here, right? Everybody in the media, when Trump was even thinking about, and remember, people don't have access to Donald Trump's brain. The media doesn't have access to it. So when they stand up at the end of his last term and they're like, Donald Trump is thinking about pardoning all these people. We know that that's just made up bullshit, right? Like,
Yeah.
nobody, there might have been a talking point leaked by somebody, some senior government official that said Donald Trump is thinking about it. But
Speaking on the condition of anonymity.
yeah, exactly. And if you can't verify this with a source, like, come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So that's already kind of in screwed up territory. But then it's a bully pulpit at that point. They jump on the air to say Donald Trump is thinking about a blanket pardon or preemptive pardons just so that they can make an argument that he shouldn't do it. This is how liberal media has traditionally done it. Just so they can make an argument that he shouldn't do it and make him sound ridiculous for even thinking about it, just to try to bully him into not doing it so that public doesn't support that potential decision, right? I don't remember anybody saying Joe Biden is thinking about pardoning all of these people and getting all up in arms about it. And I certainly don't see a lot of criticism for all of that. No, what they will say now is that Donald Trump has said he's going to go after all of his political opponents. All of his political opponents. Therefore, in order to prevent them from some sort of abusive investigation, we're going to go ahead and pardon everybody. Donald Trump didn't pardon himself, and he said during the signing of those executive orders, I probably wouldn't be sitting here had I pardoned myself. And that is exactly right. He probably wouldn't be. But Joe Biden, he's at the end of his first term, and he declared the end when he put Kamala in place. And I think that everybody knew that Joe Biden's job, when he let Kamala take the reins and move forward to the election, is to be the lame duck he was supposed to be and save everybody from their misdeeds and their misconducts. But here's the next question, Sean. What can you do now that he's pardoned everybody who was involved in this ridiculous Wuhan wet market theory, in the flagrantly abusive and January 6th hearings? We've already had a couple of episodes on that back in season 1 a long time ago. And you can look at those episodes if you want to see how we shred the January 6th hearing. There's no doubt in my mind that this was an absolute setup by Nancy Pelosi. And there's a nonpartisan certainty in my brain about this. I'm willing to admit when I'm being slightly partisan, and that's not it. And everybody gets pardoned here. What can we do now? What will Donald Trump do now? I assess in this book that I recently wrote and came out with that we're not going to see overt political prosecutions of these actors. Some of them are pardoned, not all of them.
Yeah.
What we will see, and this is a genius strategy that he can employ here. What we will see is selective prosecutions of certain individuals for things that are completely unrelated to the political side, but the DOJ is targeting them for some other reason, right? The executive has broad authority. Their statutes don't make a lot of sense. They can use them however the hell they want to. That's the problem with broad executive authority. And you can find a crime on anybody. Jack Smith famously said in his January 6th report, and I want to quote him verbatim, but it's very hard, that this doesn't exonerate Donald Trump. That was the end of the sentence. Very scary thing that Jack Smith said. And what he's essentially saying is, when we start looking into you, you need to be exonerated in order for us to stop looking.
Yeah.
Not, we need to find evidence. So that's how they're going to target these people, and you'll start to see it happening pretty soon.
Well, I think we should hear from Mr. President for just a minute on some of his thoughts, because we can't get into his brain. So hold on one second. Let me see if I can get him for us. Hello, Ron.
I love it.
We're going to do things beautifully. It's gonna be unlike what anybody has ever seen in the history of the world, not just America. Now I got to fix the Donald very quickly here for you, so I'm presentable. But here's the thing: I have been prosecuted and persecuted unlike anybody else in the history of our country. Certainly, no president has undergone what I've undergone from a prosecution standpoint. And while I have the opportunity, and I should take every legitimate legal opportunity to fight back against the injustices that were done to me because I love America and because we're going to make America great again. I'm not going to do that. But what we can do, and correct me if I'm wrong because you're the scholar,
Mm-hmm.
we can have congressional hearings. And through those congressional hearings, because these individuals have been pardoned, they have to tell the truth under oath. They cannot plead the fifth. They have to disclose what transpired, because if they don't, it's perjury.
What are you going to do? Prosecute him for perjury?
Well, listen, I think there's enough evidence out there that these were witch hunts. This Russia hoax, we've stripped 51 individuals of their security clearance.
Yeah, that
I
was
hit them. I hit them in their pocketbook because now they can't go out and they can't speak because nobody's going to give them any credence because they have nothing that they can offer because they have no more security clearance. So bye-bye, John Bolton, bye-bye, Mr. Clapper, bye-bye to all of these individuals. But here's the thing that I do want to, getting back to being serious again, I do want to ask.
Let me just first say that your Donald Trump impersonation is about as good as Joe Biden's.
Thank you.
When he wore the hat.
I actually sounded like Christopher Walken for a minute there. Ron.
What you gotta do is get a free range chicken. I don't care.
The cowbell. We got to show the cowbell. All right. What Will Ferrell did to that's why he absolutely despises Will Ferrell, because of all the cowbell thing. You got to watch it. It was a Saturday night skit. Anyways,
I know. Listen, I grew up on cowbell. I was raised right, Sean. Don't forget.
Okay. I just
Yeah.
Hey. So here's the thing. Look, me personally, I think Donald Trump is out of the gate, off and running, and sure, some of the things that he's doing are going to face legal challenges potentially down the road, some absolute extreme scrutiny. But I think with the fact that he's come out of the gate swinging, he's hit some home runs already on some of the executive orders. While I'm scared to death about the collaboration between the three tech companies, Larry Ellison and SoftBank, Oracle, SoftBank, and OpenAI for Stargate. I love knowing that we're building this in America. But again, AI scares me terribly for a number of reasons. But we can explore that as this thing starts going. I honestly want to see this stuff left behind. We've entered a new political era. Let's turn the page. Let's move forward. You've got the highest approval rating, Donald Trump, that you have ever had right now. You're over the 50% mark. I mean, that's exceptional. Take that and run. You have your mandate. Anyone who says he doesn't have a mandate is absolutely either stupid or doesn't want to admit, that this is a mandate. And I'm going to tell you something. ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, all of these news stations need to sit back and realize, as much as they don't want to, the American people don't trust them. They don't believe them. They have no credibility. And I mean, for the fact that Sean Hannity on Fox has a higher rating than CNN and MSNBC combined, that should tell you all you need to know about who people are going to for information.
Yeah, I continue to have a problem engaging in this debate, Sean. And you know,
I know. It's not. Look, Sean Hannity is not a serious journalist, in my opinion. He is a talking head. He is an entertainer. The Walter Cronkites of the world, the Brett Bears of the world. Those are the people who, for me, I think they tell the news, right? They give you the facts.
They say things like, "This is the news, the way it is,
the news, yes,
the way it was, and the way it shall be." Right? Like, I would love that, but I think people would click off in a heartbeat. You need to get clicks.
Yeah,
No,
no.
here's what I mean.
Go
Here's
ahead.
what I mean about the Sean Hannity thing. All that's a distraction. It's a distraction, right? You've got CNN arguing, Fox News arguing, public opinion back and forth, right? The public is bouncing back and forth between these two poles, Republican, Democrat. Meanwhile, you have every tech oligarch taking front and center stage at the inauguration, right? You have the giant leaders of companies that can effectively elect whoever they decide to elect. We live in an oligarchy. And the inauguration told us that we live in an oligarchy because you saw Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, the CEOs of
Zuckerberg.
Google, Oracle, Mark weird ass Zuckerberg, whatever the hell he's doing these days.
Did,
I mean,
did
it's just
did you see he got caught looking at Bezos' fiance's?
I'm not sure if that's real. AI is pretty good these days. I don't know. But I saw a clip purporting to be him looking in that direction. I just think the fact that it came out a couple of days later suggests to me that it probably was some form of AI. People are going to have to be very careful before they trust this stuff. But here's the problem: you have Elon Musk floating around, engaging in activities that have the ability to essentially elect a president. Everybody who thinks that we live in a democracy, check yourselves, check your pulse, right? If you think your vote matters, check your pulse. It doesn't. Right now, the tech oligarchs control. And with the government starting an AI project, with Donald Trump making the genius move to start this Stargate AI project, we are going to have to figure out another way to do democracy because the old way is not going to be around anymore. That I don't even think the last election was a real election. And I don't think the one before it was a real election because it was manipulated by COVID. And I'm not so sure that the one before that was even real because of Cambridge Analytica and what happened with that. So we are now a couple of cycles in to America's true voice not accurately being heard. And we have had our government stolen from us. Now, we want to enjoy what Donald Trump is doing. We do, right? But now that he's elected, and he's the least worst option, in my opinion, of what we had, now that he's elected, it's time for me to turn my guns on him and to scream out to the American public that you no longer have a democracy. We never really did. I mean, we're supposed to be in a republic. It's not a pure democracy, but you know what I mean. It is gone. We have Jennifer Whitmer prosecuting people for trying to get inside of voting machines in the United States after there was pretty credible evidence that the election was stolen in Detroit, right? We have what Elon Musk did in Pennsylvania with the get out the vote, effectively bribing people to vote. I don't think it's right. And I think that it helped Donald Trump win, and a lot of people may support that, but I have huge problems with it. I think that there's manipulation happening on both sides. And the more that we debate left and right, and the more we parade around the champion, the more we're sort of solidifying our faith in this effed up process that is the most un-American thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I wouldn't mind getting our country back in order. So I assess that Pam Bondi will have to look at elections in the United States, and we will have to look at a way. Maybe what we need to do is take Ryan Seacrest and put him on a stage and have everybody in America on your damn cell phone clicking option 1, 2, or 3 and putting in your vote live on the air during election night. Maybe we're going to have the idiocracy version of what Friday Night Rehabilitation, where our two champions get in the ring with monster trucks and chainsaws, and whoever comes out wins. I don't know how we're going to do it, but voting is probably not going to be the way of the future. So sorry to digress on that. I know we're supposed to be talking about these intricate things, but I just avoid this.
Yeah, listen, I think I agree with you on a lot of things that you said. I think so did Elon Musk have an effect on this election? I think so. I don't know if it was the money thing. I think Elon Musk is such a polarizing figure, and I think he has accomplished so much between Starlink, between X, between Tesla, between all of these things that he has built, that he has rejuvenated. I think people gravitate to him because he speaks a lot of times very plainly, and he's one of the most influential people, not just here in the United States, but in the entire world. I think what got Donald Trump this election, and this is my opinion, I think Joe Biden, people realized that he was a shell of a human being that was being manipulated by a machine, by a cabal. Um, when he was forced out of the race after his debacle of a debate in, what was that, June, by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and George Clooney and others that are part of this machine, Obama. Um, they realized that they could put Squirty McCackle into the position because she was another one who didn't have any thoughts. She was repulsive, in all sincerity, to people like myself. I mean, all she could do is cackle and
Yeah.
laugh, and she had nothing.
Sean, we've been talking about that for 10 episodes. Let's
My point is,
do something else.
I don't think in my opinion, I think this election was a real election. I think the people spoke, and I think their votes counted in all of the swing states. And irrespective of what anybody thinks about how this thing played out, I think this was an election for the people, by the people. They spoke. They gave it to the person who was the least worst option at this point, but who will turn out to be probably the most influential political leader of our times. And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying the power that this guy has been able to demonstrate, rising from the ashes where his political career was all but over, to now becoming the most powerful person in the entire world, arguably. I think this was, in my opinion, an election where the people's voice was finally heard and their votes counted.
I I hear you, and I know a lot of people believe that, and a lot of people did vote. I think that my point here rises a little bit higher,
Okay.
not just in the battle between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. I think that the people got to select between those two, and I'm not so sure that there was enough manipulation with our election to really change that, right? But what I'm concerned about is the choice in the first place. Okay, we don't have the most talented people in our republic coming forward being able to take these positions. We have tech oligarchs largely anointing people. If we did not have Elon Musk, well, let me give you an example of how this shapes things, how Americans lose choice because of the oligarchs. J.D. Vance was selected as vice president. J.D. Vance has tech friends from Silicon Valley. Did the tech friends put J.D. Vance in the office so that things like cryptocurrency, AI, tech innovation can be accomplished? Or did Trump pick J.D. Vance and J.D. Vance pulled these people along? Well, given the donations that came into Donald Trump's campaign, and money wins campaigns, absolutely no doubt. If Donald Trump had $5 million to spend to become president of the United States and Kamala Harris had $900 million, Kamala Harris wins the president of the United States, right? So Trump gets the money because he picks J.D. Vance. Now, who picked our vice president for us? Our president based on who's best to lead the country, or the tech oligarchs who want to have their inside guy so that they can continue to monopolize the United States? Here's a stock tip for everybody. If you are investing in S&P 500 companies that are of the old variety, your Boeing, your Procter and Gamble, all of those, sell that shit right now. Because the new day, everything, Sean, you're like actually going to sell it right now. I see you looking at the phone. Yeah, you're just jumping on Fidelity and just click sell, sell, sell. I appreciate your faith in me. But sell that shit immediately, because everything is going to be dominated by the people that now have the closest inside person. They made the most money. They made it quickly. They have it to spend. They can influence policy. They can influence public opinion. And when JD Vance is running for president after Donald Trump's next term, if everything goes right and he does everything they want him to do, they are going to fuel his next election. He will dance into the White House, and he will ensure that the tech oligarchs get more power overnight, right? They're going to get a lot during this administration. They're going to get more. Why should that concern the Americans? Well, most of our spending is to these companies. You spend a lot on Apple. You spend a lot on Google, especially every company that's like advertising. You have to spend a lot of money. AI and supercomputing is going to change the world. We're going to get to a place that Carl Sagan warned us about. The country is going to get too complicated for us normal people to understand. Machines will be the only things that can really understand how just about everything works. Tell me right now how your cell phone connects to a satellite. I have no freaking clue, right? Machines will figure that stuff out for us. And who controls the machines? It's the tech oligarchs, right? They will control virtually everything, and they will be able to manipulate prices, and antitrust litigation against them is likely going to be dropped. That's one of the things they really needed from this administration, and that's what you're going to see very early. So they get more powerful. They instill their powerful person, puts us in a situation where America loses choice.
Look. The only thing that I would say is, and we can move back to what we were talking about before. My understanding is that the Kamala Walls campaign actually had more money in the coffers than the Trump Vance campaign.
Well, they were in debt.
Well, I mean,
they
ended in debt, but I mean, they spent $1 billion on their campaign. Now, I mean, paying Oprah Winfrey $1 million and Beyonce $1 million and all these people. I mean, yeah, I think they were $28 million in debt or something. They didn't spend their money wisely, but nonetheless, I agree with you. Silicon Valley has controlled, no doubt, the last several elections. And as they get bigger, more powerful, their machines become more in control of our every thought, every emotion, every spending habit, everything that we do. The power goes directly to those people who are able to influence our purchases, our viewing patterns, our thought process. I mean, it's scary. And
the laws and regulations that control technology and its use, data, right? Let's just go to Larry Ellison's statement about Stargate, and he's very proud to announce that you can do a blood test for cancer, and we can create individual vaccines. If that's not a hot button word right now, right? Like, I don't know if that's a good PR move right there. Let's talk about that later. But he's really happy that EHR can be used so that a doctor who's working at Kaiser Permanente can show a doctor who's in Red Falls, Iowa or something. I don't know if that's a real town. Show them how to practice. Des Moines, yeah. But here's what that really means. That really means that EHR surveillance is about to go through the roof with the use of AI. It really means that audits, Sean, are going to start moving almost to an immediate basis, right?
I agree 100%.
Hopefully have claim denials that can happen immediately as a result of government regulations and guidelines. And Trump certainly wants to, and Pam Bondi certainly wants to eliminate that aspect of the federal budget related to fraud, waste, and abuse. And so, that's a great example of where the tech oligarchs are helping the government keep the people down, and where the government is helping the tech oligarchs stay in power. They get control over a large percentage of electronic health records in the United States. They're able to scan that information and come out with the next biological tools that we're supposed to use. They'll make a lot of money off the vaccines. Meanwhile, the government gets the benefit, along with Palantir, being able to go through anybody's medical record at any time and allege that their doctor has committed some sort of fraud as a result of a code that they don't like very much. They've gotten into your doctor's office so deep that your doctor is nothing more than selecting from a menu of permissible options that the government has allowed you to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. All right, so let's talk about where we think things are headed during these first 100 days that Donald Trump
Hmm.
has promised to be very, very busy. And if the first 24 hours is any indication, I don't think he's exaggerating.
Well, I think first he's going to invade Poland. That's what we heard was going to happen. And then I think he's going to take a hard look at France, eventually moving in. And then we'll have whatever spreading across the globe with the fascist, all of the warnings that we had from people before he was elected. I think all of that stuff is going to come true, Sean, and we will end up with a dictator that is controlling us.
I will tell you, I've seen some people putting out this conspiracy that Donald Trump has found a loophole in the Constitution to allow him to serve a third term. Stop it! Stop it! Please stop it!
We're being children, actually.
Yes.
They're actually being children. So first, I mean, if there was a loophole in the Constitution that allowed him to serve a third term, then you think that Obama wouldn't have used Joe Biden to serve a third term. He would have just
That's
done
right.
it. Obama's a fantastic constitutional scholar. He's a lawyer. He knows what he's doing. He's very smart, and he had very smart people around him and very great political tacticians. I think that every other president before Barack Obama probably would have found a way to do a third term. But no, Donald Trump doesn't even want a third term. It's much better to be a former president than a president. Everybody knows that. You just don't want to get Jimmy Cartered. That's all.
Yeah.
You just
And
don't want to get.
speaking of Barack Obama, I think
Yeah.
he's the only person who could walk into a presidential inauguration without his spouse and make it look really freaking cool. I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
huge Obama fan, I kind of like him a little bit more now after his presidency. But I mean, the guy's got a cool factor about him.
Yeah,
I
he's
don't know
playing
what
his.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's playing his role. I'm okay with him. I mean, if you look at his policies when he was
Oh,
running, a,
sucked.
a lot of that stuff when he was running was he'd probably align more with conservatives these days, just like old Hillary Clinton, old Bill Clinton, all of those people, for the most part, align with conservatives. I remember being in the Marine Corps during the Obama administration enforcing "Don't Ask, Don't Tell." He didn't get rid of it,
No.
and he could have. He didn't, and that kind of was hard because at that point we just felt it was so old and stale that we didn't want to enforce it. Nobody really wanted to, but we had to.
And don't forget, Don't Ask, Don't Tell came from the Clinton administration.
Yeah, and he was the deporter. Obama was the deporter in chief. I mean,
Absolutely. Separating
or-
families, putting them in cages. So, people, again, that's the thing that we've been talking about is the mind manipulation.
Mhm.
And you're going to see more of that. I agree with you. So,
Yeah. So let's jump to some of the executive orders. Well, we got a few minutes
Yes.
here. That's what we promised everybody to talk about. Couple of highlights. Let me just rattle them off. I think we covered the Denali McKinley thing, which is the most near and dear to my heart, but it's not the most near and dear to most Americans. Let's talk about border crisis and immigration. Probably going to be a separate episode on this so that we can discuss exactly how he's going to do it. This is something, as a federal defense attorney, I'm watching very closely because if you are not undocumented, I guess I should not use the double negative. If you are documented, you're supposed to be here. You're not safe from this. One of the first things that Pam Bondi will do, and this is what I assess in my book, is crack down on all avenues for relief for undocumented immigrants. And I'm not going to use the term illegal aliens. It's too much. I'm okay with saying undocumented because I think that there are
Why,
ways
though?
that you can
Why?
get documented.
I mean, they're here illegally. They're
It's just, I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit too inflammatory, and undocumented
Okay.
just does it for me. It's okay. Um, but it's not that I'm going to argue
What
with
about
anybody.
illegal immigrants?
Illegal immigrants.
Aye, ayes.
Well, let me give you a scenario.
Okay.
And this is true, happened to me. Let's say that you move over to Germany because your parent gets a job as some sort of worker for an American auto manufacturer, executive job or something. And you were supposed to get a visa renewed, but the visa office at your company fails to get it done. And you find out that you are just about to overstay your visa, and you have a choice: either immediately evacuate the country and have a long stay outside until Germany takes care of it, or maybe you stay until the paperwork snafu is completed, then you exit, then you come back in so that you have your documentation. Do we consider that person to be an illegal alien? I guess under the technical definition of this phrase, yes. I think it's a documentation issue. And so that's the same for people who've overstayed student visas and all of that. I just don't like the connotation and the fact that we're lumping all of that together. I think this is a broad phrase. That happened to me. I didn't consider myself an illegal alien, but it's only when we have Mexican cross border from Rio Grande enter United States that we start saying illegal alien. The executive who overstayed their visa doesn't get that phrase. And so I start to feel like that phrase is a little bit more targeted than we really need. That's just me.
But isn't it a little bit different though? Because the individual whose paperwork got muffed, okay, or it expired, they actually came through the process correctly the first time to get into the country, as opposed to those who are coming to this country without any documentation, without any approval of the State Department, and they are thus crossing the border not at a legal point of entry, but at a point of entry that is not legal.
Both of those are the
Such
same
as
crime.
Rio Grande.
Same federal crime. Same federal crime.
Okay. Hey, you're
Yeah.
the attorney. I'm just asking questions as sometimes an ill-informed American citizen.
It's just it's just a thing. It doesn't need to be a big deal, but I'll choose that phrase. So
Sure.
we've got a whole bunch. I think 10 total executive orders on the immigration debate. I believe that one thing that Pam Bondi will do, and this is probably a good first start, is they will start cracking down on employers' visas and the misuse of those visas, along with the employment of undocumented workers in the United States. And let me tell you, if you were to eradicate all undocumented workers, especially along the southern border and border towns, you are going to have a huge drop off in the workforce. So this is going to be a huge problem. But I think they will enforce federal laws requiring these people to employ documented folks, which is the only thing that you can do. Because imagine you have undocumented workers competing with documented workers. Those new, fresh, documented workers who've come into the United States lawfully are going to have a hard time getting employment in the unskilled labor market when they're competing with somebody who gets paid cash and doesn't contribute to the system. So that's going to be a big problem for Pam Bondi to solve. She's going to have to do something about it. And unfortunately, a lot of her friends in those southern border areas have been making a living off of using undocumented workers and are going to be a little bit pissed off. So she's going to have trouble with some of her constituents. A lot of her Florida voters are using Cuban labor that may not necessarily be documented, right? A lot of people in Texas going to be doing the same thing. The next thing I have to jump on, and I did a whole podcast on my old show, De Novo, about this because I saw Joe Biden about to do it, and that's the deployment of the National Guard on the United States border. Let's not get it twisted, everybody. National Guard does not have the ability to enforce law in the United States. There's a law called Posse Comitatus. It is one of the most important unheard laws. We've talked about this, I think, a couple of times on the show. And that law is vital to America because it prevents military from using force inside the United States to enforce laws. They can man checkpoints. They can observe. We have the Marine Corps send sensor platoons with ground sensors down to the Rio Grande, which is a great use of them for training. You could throw snipers up in towers and on the wall so they can use thermal goggles to catch people running across and tell Border Patrol to go get them. They can do all of that stuff. But what they can't do is arrest and detain and and enforce the law on the border. They're just going to be used to augment and to stop the flow. But the reason why Donald Trump declared a national emergency on the border is for a very, very big, important reason. That national emergency allows the deployment, the activation, the nationalization of the National Guard, meaning those troops no longer belong to Texas, they belong to the federal government, and other states will likely send National Guard troops down to the southern border, which means we will have a mass of government power on the border effectively stopping the inflow of migrants and funneling them to routine channels. Not something I object to. I think that Germany, France, Portugal, Spain, Canada would do the same thing if they had the flow that we have. And nobody should look at this as being racist or fascist or anything. It's just legitimately protecting a border. Now, the other thing he has to do is open that legitimate channel. One more executive order, super important to go over. And a lot of people don't understand the significance of this. But if you go back to a show that we had, Sean, about, and this is the one that I get the most questions on this show. We talked about the funding, the use of terrorist funding on college campuses post October invasion of Israel. And we discussed terrorist funding and terrorist organizations and the law related to that. Donald Trump declared the cartels terrorist organizations, or the national threat, officially declared them terrorist organizations. Here's what this means, and here's what I talked about in the last show. Right now, if you are giving material support to terrorism, they have to prove that you provided material support, meaning you actually aided in some sort of act of terrorism. The important part of the material support to terrorism law is that if an entity is not designated a terrorist organization, the government would have to prove that you aided in some sort of act of terrorism by funding or something like that. But if they are declared a terrorist organization by the government, any action in concert with that terrorist organization then becomes an act of terrorism. So here's what you're going to see on the border. This is coming. People who funnel people across the border for the cartels, people who smuggle drugs for the cartels, people who smuggle fentanyl across the border for the cartels will not just be prosecuted for that overall drug charge, but they have opened up the full range of anti-terrorism laws to be used against them, which means their ability to seize, their ability to punish, their ability to sentence. And some of these offenses are even capital offenses, yes, meaning they can also execute people related to this. So that should be a wake-up call for the cartels. I think they're going to be powerless pretty soon. But then the other issue that this invokes is that foreign governments who aid the cartels in the establishment or accomplishment of their mission, those foreign governments are now going to be providing material support to terrorism, which opens up a lot of resources in terms of the CIA, even the FBI, when they engage in some international missions. And it gives us the ability to sanction those countries and prevent them. And this is part of the laws that Bush had in place, and prevent those countries from doing business with business people inside of the United States. And it will also criminalize the business that those people do with these countries that we have determined are aiding and providing material support to terrorism. So his next phone call is to any country that has been harboring those terrorist organizations, saying, I am about to pass a law, or I'm about to sign an executive order, that the force and effect of that executive order is going to make it illegal for any U.S. businessman to do business with you. Every factory that we have inside your country will close. All flow of money, all employment, your country will be ripped directly into poverty because you decided to go with the cartels, and you're going to have to side with them from now on. You have absolutely no American support whatsoever. Yeah. Serious power move coupled with tariffs to stop fentanyl coming in the United States. I think that is what we needed to stop overdose deaths, not the flagrant prosecution of physicians because they prescribed a little bit more Norco than a federal prosecutor likes. This is a serious effort for serious people who actually want to stop our kids dying in this country. Yeah.
All right, man. I think this was a great first episode of 2025.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that we keep on top of what's going on and continue our semi agreements from time to time on the different topics, because I think that's what people enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't think people are always looking for two people to always say, "Oh, I'm in complete agreement with you. Oh, you're always right." No, I think this is what allows people to think freely and to use their minds and to do what news organizations are supposed to do, which is present the facts, give cited information, give good sources, give people the resources to be able to go investigate on their own, educate themselves, and make their own independent, free willed determination of which way they want to go. And that's
Sean,
what the wall
I'm a
does.
perpetual contrarian. I'm just always going to go against whoever's in power. That's how it is. It's just how it's always going to be. We got to keep them in check, man.
Makes it interesting. It makes it interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time.
All right. Well, hey, listen, to everybody who took some time out to hang out with Ron Chapman and I for a little while today, we thank you so much. We appreciate your loyalty, your following us. Don't forget to subscribe and survive. We have entered a new political arena, a new political era, at least for the next 4 years. I think you have found your information candy store, and we will provide you with a variety to choose from. So tune in, log on, hang out with us again. Ron, I'll give you the final word.
Just a shameless plug. So Truth and Persuasion, new book just came out. This is the one that I'm most proud of, spent the most time on. It's about 2 years in the making, but it's an analysis of all of the things that need to be said about our digital age and how it's changing our ability to speak and communicate with each other. But then there's that other ebook that I mentioned. It's called The Second Act. It's about the Bondi Trump DOJ and a look into exactly what's going to happen. If you're a business professional or a compliance professional, or your company sort of relies on what the DOJ may look at and what they may do, this is going to be the thing for you. It's going to really give you the tools that you need to move forward. I hope to have a link for you by the time this one's out. Comes in a very cheap ebook, so it should be easy for most people to procure. I just want the information to get out there. Thanks for a lovely show, Sean. Season 2. I always enjoy being here. It was incredibly delightful. And let's hit it next week. I think on tap, we've got some immigration discussions. We probably got to get to that Diddy thing. I think we're getting close to needing to do that Diddy episode.
It's just a little ditty.
Just a little ditty, I mean, I think that we got to get into it. There's a lot to talk about there, as well as a whole bunch of interesting issues with AI technology. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg is turning into a teenage boy, and we've got to cover that. So
hey, listen, there's that Brian Johnson, I think is his name. They did the documentary, the tech guy who has now reversed, I think, 5 years off of his life. But listen, I can't wait to get into some of these episodes with you. I think, besides being serious, I think we're going to take a lighthearted approach, at least from my perspective, to some of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed Donald Trump joining us today. Go Donald. And we'll see y'all soon. Take care.